This is an update on all the fronts in the Gaza war. Let's begin with Yemen. The Yemeni resistance fired 2 drones and 1 anti-ship ballistic missile at the United States Navy in the Red Sea. They fired at the USS Gravely. That's the name of the ship. That's the destroyer. The Americans claim they shot these drones and anti-ship ballistic missile down. These are, of course, the incidents that we know about. There are many that go unreported by the Americans, and these were leaked to the press. We'll find out more about the other ones once the Houthis make their official statements. And once again, I'll just reiterate that the Yemenis are the only people on the planet who can actually fire at American ships and get away with it. So that speaks volumes to their, as to their capabilities and standing. So these particular ones didn't hit, but the ship involved was the. Forgive me, I had it with me here. Well, not to worry, not to worry. The name of the ship doesn't matter. I had it with me though, but it's okay. So a number of American ships being hit because we haven't had an update for a few days. I would say at least a week. No updates on whether commercial ships were hit, but the Yemenis are still keeping the Americans in check, and there's really nothing they can do about it. How many times have Britain and America bombed the Houthis? Has that changed a single thing about the blockade? Not at all. Remember, the strategy here is to continue bleeding the Israelis. Then we have over here the Iraqi resistance. They struck an Israeli airbase in Haifa. Once again, perhaps I should bring up the map to show you what a remarkable feat this is. Look at, for example, the distance between the Iraqi border. You see here, this is Iraq, and Haifa is all the way over here. So just to be conservative, even from here, we're talking about hundreds of kilometers and very, very pinpoint accurate missiles. So the fact that all of the resistance possess these weapons, I mean, it speaks volumes. And these things go unreported in Western media. Have you noticed that? You never hear about this when, if you turn on Sky News, and my condolences if you do, or you turn on the BBC. Do they ever talk about the fact that the Iraqis are hitting Ben Gurion, they're hitting Haifa port, they're hitting Eilat? Do you hear about these things? Never. Because it's so embarrassing and the Israelis can't do a thing. Their Iron Dome is trash. It doesn't work. It can be easily overwhelmed if need be. And remember, of course, for example, Hezbollah using their ATGMs. I mean, you can't protect against that in any way. But let's stick to the Iraqi resistance. So they targeted this base, the Ramat David air base in occupied Haifa using drones. Another thing that happened was on the Lebanese front with Hezbollah. They targeted a whole bunch of facilities yesterday and today. So this is yesterday on the 4th of April. They struck one site in the occupied Lebanese hills of Kfar Shibba with artillery shells, resulting in direct hits. They struck a group of Israeli enemy soldiers in Al-Merj with artillery. They struck a building housing Israeli enemy soldiers in a settlement with appropriate weapons, resulting in casualties. And this was, of course, in response to Israeli attacks on the southern villages and civilian homes. Remember, the Israelis always hit civilians, whether it's Syria, Lebanon, or Palestine, and the resistance target military assets. That's the difference. So here you can see also in the western sector, they struck a gathering of Israeli soldiers. They also struck the Branit barracks with rockets, and they struck another group of soldiers. If we look at today's feats as well, they've struck another group of assets. And I'll play you a video of the latest one. This is from today. Take a look. Sorry, I muted it just for the copyright. These are enemy forces, Junud al-Adu. To be clear, the resistance never targets civilians. They only hit military assets. This is a house, but it's a house that's been repurposed and appropriated by a group of Israeli soldiers that were under surveillance. And we have the proof right before us. That's the difference, is that we have the video evidence always released by the resistance, whereas the Israelis lie and want you to believe that a civilian target is a military one. This is today, on the 5th of April. And once again, only military targets. And keep in mind that even if they struck settlements, I mean, what is a settlement? A colonial settlement? Is that not an affront? The occupation itself is an affront. But look at the crater. I mean, this is the same roof with infrared on the left, and then the next day, look at the roof over there. The Israelis, they put military barracks, military targets inside the Israeli settlements. Many of these settlements on October 7th had military barracks inside. So it's the definition of using human shields. And then they have the nerve to call Palestinians, civilian people in their houses who refuse to be kicked out, human shields being used by Hamas. I mean, I've never heard such drivel in my life. Really, it's like someone insisting that 1 + 1 is 3. What the fuck is wrong with you? Forgive my French. So these are just a few short updates that I wanted to bring you from the various fronts. And again, the daily confrontations between the resistance, whether it's in Iraq or Lebanon or Yemen or Syria, and the Israeli occupation is a necessity, unfortunately, because remember, the Arabs tried diplomacy multiple times. The Palestinians signed the Oslo Accords. You then had the Arab Peace Initiative in the early 2000s. I mean, the Israelis, they just don't, you can't reason with them because they're hell-bent on stealing land. Nothing you do can satisfy them, short of dying or leaving your house. And how can any human being with dignity accept these things? They can't. And therefore, they have taken up the resistance. It's interesting also to see the way that it's referred to. So you see how they say the Islamic resistance, whether they're talking about the one in Iraq or in Palestine. And before, you had different kinds of resistance from the Arabs. You had secular groups. You had many Christians also who pioneered this. I did a video on that, and many Christians, literally too many of them to name. I forgot some of them, but they pioneered a lot of this stuff. And it's I think it's George Habash, who is a Christian Arab. He said that they had their time with the PFLP, with the PLO, and now it's the turn of Hezbollah and Hamas, and they seem to be doing something right. He meant that in a positive way, of course. And just to be clear, when we're talking about Christian or Muslim, no one actually sees it like that. It's ironically, it's kind of secular at the end, because Hamas are fighting just as much for Christian Palestinians as they are for Muslim Palestinians. There's no difference. Same thing with the resistance in Iraq. Same thing with the resistance in I mean, Yemen doesn't have as big of a Christian population as Lebanon or Iraq, but nonetheless, it really is kind of pan-Arab in the end. But of course, Iran being the strongest element and backer. Iran is not an Arab country, of course. Iran has helped to lift up these groups, and I need to mention this today on Quds Day, because the celebration itself is another asset that Iran has done and crafted to help champion the Palestinian and Arab causes, right? So we have to show respect to them, because without Iran, where would all of these countries be? They would just be US puppets. We know how the Americans behave. We know how they are in the region, and they are only concerned with stealing resources. Iran itself was a de facto colony controlled by Britain and America, and then when it broke free in '79, they started to hate it, and the rest is history. Well, I mean, literally, but it's still ongoing, isn't it? We know everything else. They hate Iran to this day just because it wanted to be independent. That's the truth.